Do you know the world record for a plank, the exercise, is literally over 9 hours? Yet you can barely get yourself to focus on work for just a few minutes? It comes down to the brain's hidden control center for discipline, called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. This is something the neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, along with actually David Goggins, highlighted as the key to productivity and focus. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 simple, actually science-based methods to grow this brain area that I've refined over about 8 years of trying different things that'll make your hard tasks feel effortless. To start, let me show you how Shaolin monks grow this brain area for their monk-like discipline. If you know who Shaolin monks are, you've probably heard before of them doing something called a horse stance. So they stand in a position kind of like this, and they would endure the pain. You can literally try it right now just while I'm explaining this point. You probably can barely last 1 minute. So at first your legs are gonna burn like really bad after like maybe only 30 seconds, and then that's going to make you stop. But then the interesting thing is if you keep practicing, you can hold it longer and longer. But it's not really because your legs are getting stronger. It's because you're getting better at handling the pain, even though the pain is still always the same. So the Shaolin monks can actually endure this for like tens of minutes. And this is actually the reason why monks can live in essentially monk mode for their entire life. But then how do you use this for yourself to grow your anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or AMCC for short, and get insane monk-like discipline as well? There's 3 different ways for this: Venus burn, and then stationary burn. Starting first off with Venus burn, there's a couple of steps to this. You just want to start with any exercise. I recommend a leg exercise. You can see like doing squats right here, just because your legs are a big muscle. Or you can do like calf raises if you really want to. Then you just want to do as many as you possibly can like this until complete failure. Like a 10 out of 10 burn, like you can barely handle the pain. And then step 3 is to go and stretch this out. So if you know how like the Japanese sit, if they kind of sit like this with their knees bent on the floor, you go directly from your squat and you go into that position. And what that does is it holds the blood there, so the blood doesn't really flow. It stretches out the muscle, and it makes the burn like 10 times worse, and it continues to get worse and worse and worse because the burning chemicals are just building up in your leg. And you just hold that stress. So if, for example, if you did a calf raise, then you just stretch your calf. Or if you did like some hamstring thing, you would stretch your hamstring. And you endure the burn as long as you possibly can. And this discomfort will grow your AMCC for discipline. And the second way is active burn. So you would just like choose any exercise. Again, you could just choose like a squat again, or you could choose like push-ups or bench press, anything. And then you would burn out again, as many as you possibly do. But then where the active burn comes in is you just like push out 5 more. You would imagine how much pain your brain can actually endure. You say you can't do any more, it burns too much, but you can probably do like 5 more. And you just don't want to pick a exercise that is too heavy. Like don't put too much heavy weights, because that'll prevent you from actually doing your maximum. And a pro tip here is just like make some primal grunts. You know, people say don't make those primal grunts, but they'll help you push a little bit further. And then of course there's stationary burn. So that's very simply just like doing a plank or doing the horse stance like the Shaolin monks. You just hold that burn as long as possible. And then through this physical discomfort is where your AMCC grows. Because by doing things that are uncomfortable, by doing things that you specifically don't want to do or hate, is when your AMCC grows. But unfortunately, if you enjoy this burn, if you enjoy the burn, not only does your AMCC not grow, it shrinks. It literally gets smaller. So it becomes harder to then go on and do things that you don't want to do, like work and focus on it. So we have to go to a different way. We have to find other methods to grow our AMCC. And we learned this from a guy that I read about recently that literally climbed Mount Everest like barely any gear and survived in the Arctic without any proper clothing. But he wasn't actually just able to naturally do this, like climbing Mount Everest without gear. It actually started with the worst thing you can think of. He lost his wife to suicide. So obviously being like completely mentally destroyed, super sad. He didn't know what to do himself. So he just dunked himself into ice water all the time, because this is like the only thing that can get him off the death of his wife. That like super sadness, because it's such a strong shock that I was able to like push that sadness to the side of his mind, and he could ignore it for just a little bit. But in the cold water over time, just keep going into these ice baths. Instead of the cold shocking him over and over again, he found that it actually calmed his mind, allowed him to get more focused. So even when he was outside of the ice water, he actually started to feel a bit more normal. The sadness wasn't as pronounced. So through this constant practice of doing the cold exposure, like the extreme discomfort of the ice water, his mind became calmer and calmer and more focused. Who is this guy, you ask? You probably heard him before. This is literally Wim Hof. I didn't know his story before. So he teaches Wim Hof breathing to many people. He teaches the cold exposure, all these benefits that you can get out of it. But how can you use this principle to train your AMCC for discipline and focus for yourself? So there is one way that is actually very different from what Wim Hof teaches. I call it the One Punch Man method. Basically, he's a super strong character in an anime where he one punches everything, if you don't know. But one of the things that One Punch Man did in order to get to this point of being super strong is literally in the summer, he just did not use the AC to train his mental toughness. So you can do a very similar thing. So instead of doing the cold, you do hot, and you should endure that heat because it sucks, you know? And then the second way has 5 different variations. So cold exposure, at its most basic extreme form, you just do the ice bath. Second way is you can just do a cold shower, like a lot of people tell you. But a lot of times this is very inconvenient. You know, you have to go out of your way to do the cold shower. Usually maybe not even at a time that you normally take a shower if you don't take a shower in the morning. So what I like to do instead is just rinse my head in cold water. So I'll rinse my entire head in cold water. It fixes my bed head usually in the morning and washes my face. And this will get you the effect of cold exposure without too much inconvenience to your daily routine. But if that's too much for you, you can just wash your face with cold water. You probably already washed your face, now just wash it with cold water. But even if that is too much, the simplest variation of cold exposure you can do is literally in the winter you're already cold. So wash your hands with cold water. It sucks, right? So that'll also train your AMCC. So temperature is like a pretty easy one to train your discipline from this discomfort, but it's not for everybody. There's one more thing that you can do to grow your AMCC for discipline that's actually has a byproduct of increasing your mental ability during your focus. So your brain will actually work better, and maybe you learn faster or be more skilled during the work that you actually do when you focus. And that's with a salesman. He would always make cold calls, but he hated these cold calls. You know, he was struggling all the time because he was like, oh, what if people say no? What if people think I'm stupid? What if I don't close the call? Always feared making these calls. So he didn't make too many of them. He would just like always go back and review for so much time. Although he always just had to read the same script. But what do you think you would do in this situation? You would just do more calls, right? Worrying about what people would do is not going to do anything. You're just reading the same sales script over and over again. So one day, the sales guy decided, okay, you know, fuck it. I'm actually just going to do 100 calls per day, no matter what. I don't care what people think. I'm not even going to hang up the phone. And I'm just going to sit there, have it, and just like smacking it to hang up and to get to the next call. So even though it was completely brutal in the first couple of days, he faced his rejection. He did his 100 calls, and, you know, he felt like crap. You know, he felt like he's getting punched in the gut every day. But he reminded himself that, like, you know, every single time I failed a call, every time someone said no, that was just one step closer to his next call, which could be a yes. So over time, something crazy happened. He actually faced rejection more. So more people said no in total. But the thing is, he gave a shit less. And he started to see that failure, that no, not as failure, but as what he could do better next time. And he very quickly review it in his brain. And within a few months, from struggling with closing a single deal, he actually became a damn good salesman. And this guy, actually, you've probably heard of him as well. This was Alex Hormozi. He went from like broke gym bro to making over $100 million. So how do you use this to grow your AMCC, again, for discipline and focus, and also train your mental ability? It's just 3 different steps. So you have to identify your bottleneck. And in this case, so Alex Hormozi, his bottleneck was actually making the calls. He had a fear that people are going to reject him. Therefore, he spent a lot of time worrying, and therefore not getting that many closed deals. So once you identify this bottleneck, it could be anything for you. For example, it's like talking to people, it's asking for help, rejection, commitment to a certain goal, trying out a new skill, going all in on something, or just being afraid to fail. Identify that, and then go in step 2 and take one step forward. Push yourself slightly out of your comfort zone, no matter what. So literally, I sucked at talking to people. I always, like, when I went to go and talk to a crowd, I was like, you know, I get red faced and I would have a hard time getting my words out, stuttering. So literally, I went and make these YouTube videos, and now I can quite easily talk to a lot of people. I went outside my comfort zone. If you go back and watch my first video, I sounded like a retard, but now I don't. And step 3 is just like I did, repeat this over and over again. Like, run straight into your fear. Any fear you have, you'll have multiple, not just one thing. And by doing that, you'll open your bottlenecks. So if you think of a bottleneck like this. If you now open this and the rest of your skills are wide like this, getting tons of results. If you open it, now you can get way more results just by this little growth. And of course, in definition of running straight into your fears right into whatever you think is most uncomfortable, this will grow your AMCC, because the simple thing of anything that you hate, anything that is uncomfortable, will grow your AMCC, and your AMCC, the bigger it is, the more focused, the more disciplined you will be. And eventually you have like David Goggins, like discipline. Like he forces himself to do things he hates all the time. But there's a problem. If your brain is so fried that you literally can't even do the smallest thing that is uncomfortable, like the only thing you could possibly do is enjoyment, entertainment, like watching TikTok videos, playing video games, watching anime, how will you ever train your brain? You can't, right? If you can't do anything uncomfortable, you can't train your AMCC. It'll continuously keep shrinking, making it harder over time. You can actually watch this video here and learn about a separate mechanism in your brain that I use on a daily basis, so I can focus all day long without any complex productivity systems.